To Around the Lens, episode 103. I'm your host, David J. Murphy. Joining me this week as my co-host is Ron Hamilton. Ron, how you doing, buddy?
Aloha from Hawaii.
Aloha.
Doing well, sir. Sunny and warm.
Indeed, it's been a few weeks. How you been? What's been going on? Anything new?
You know, we're very busy here. We've got a lot of important things in the news taking place in Hawaii right now. And sometimes we like to cover those things.
Okay, well, do you ever do any night capture? You ever go drive around at night? Capture the nightlife?
You know, I try to stay away from that sort of thing because I hear it can be dangerous. But we can talk about a little bit about that later on, I suppose.
Indeed. I'm preempting. I'm giving you a little preview of what we're going to talk about tonight. We got a great show for you tonight. We're going to talk about all things that are great. Show before net neutrality. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before I start the show, of course, let me introduce our guest this week, professor from Syracuse University, Michael D. Davis. Michael, can you please tell people about yourself and what you do?
Sure. I'm relatively new to the professor game. Working on my 5th year. Fortunate to hold a chaired faculty position, which means I teach, and I also work with the Alexia Foundation and run their grant competition, which gives a grant of $20,000 to a professional and considerable grant to students as well. It supports work that has social significance, that has value beyond simply existing, and ideally inspires people to create change, make things better.
I was actually there when they did an Alexa judging one time when I was going to school there, and it's a fascinating thing to watch, just seeing these wonderful, wonderful photo stories and whatnot flickering by, and it's just your eyes like it's always tough to kind of like how you kind of whittle those down to the very best, because they're so great. They're all so great, it seems.
It's a great judging panel every year, and keep trying to raise the bar on and encourage different story forms, and it's a pure labor of love. So
has Alexa been doing anything with the video, or is it all still just photos?
Students more and more are submitting videos on the side. We still require still imagery as the core. 2 years ago, even one student even did a 360 VR piece that was really well done.
You just put headsets on to judge that?
She submitted still images, and the proposal then was to produce still in a video, and then the proposal was to expand from that. That's its main difference is it's not simply to recognize work that's been done, but to support work that's proposed. Very different from most in that sense.
If anybody listening wants to participate in Alexia, when's the due date?
Professional deadline is February 1st. Students is March 1st. Competition platform opens January 7th. Okay.
Well, great. Well, there you go. Start getting your entries all together because the deadline's coming up soon.
So for what it's worth, before that, for about 30 years, I've been a picture editor, working in a variety of settings. The last few years, I was an independent, working directly with photographers all over the world to help them produce bodies of work that resulted in books or shows at Perpignan or galleries or portfolio refinements, essentially helping them advance their way of telling stories with images.
Nice. What's Perpignan?
Perpignan is Festival of the Photograph. It's probably the largest gathering of photojournalism in the world.
Wow. All right, then. Ron, we're going to have to meet up there. Me, you, and Zach will have to do a show from there next year.
When I hear stuff like, oh, it's the greatest thing in the world for photo, really? And why is this the first time I'm hearing about it?
Well, that's a good question.
I feel so in the dark.
So I've also been a picture editor at 5 different newspapers, at National Geographic magazine, and then I was the lead picture editor at the White House during the first 4 years of the George W. Bush administration.
Oh, wow. What do you think of the current administration's White House photographer?
Sheila? I don't know her real well, and we rarely get to see her work, so I have no idea. I wouldn't want to be her.
How about the Obama administration photographer? His
Pete,
work was
yeah.
pretty out there.
Pete, yeah, he and I worked on a story together when I was at National Geographic. Yeah, he's phenomenal. His book, if you haven't seen it, you should. And Amanda Lucidon has produced a book about Mrs. Obama that's equally powerful. So it's a match set of books. You must have both.
Oh, yeah, of course. Well, you know what? Actually, I tried to reach out to Pete and have him on the show to talk about his book, but apparently he's booked.
Literally.
No pun intended. For like ever. Because I said, hey, I have an entire slot of shows for the rest of the year here. And, you know, I said, any of these shows work? And the response I got was, Pete's booked. Sorry, can't do any more interviews. Like, really? Nothing from now until the end of time? And we should do this show every Monday. You know, maybe in a couple of years when Around the Lens has a little bit more cachet, esteem, and a larger audience, we can get Pete on.
If you go to his site, it has his schedule.
Does it? Okay. Yeah. Well, I know he's a busy guy. Maybe he is very busy, and I'm just being a jerk. But so on National Geographic, of course, an outstanding publication. One of the places, you know, we've all hoped to get our stuff featured in someday. You know, I remember talking. We visited not National Geographic, but I remember talking to someone I think who worked for them or knew about the industry there, and he said the way you apply for National Geographic is you like apply for it, and then they say, okay, well, you know, come back in like 10 years or so once you've developed, and then we'll see if maybe we can get you in at that time. That's kind of like the only piece of advice I ever got about working for National Geographic. So
it's a high bar, that's for sure.
Indeed, indeed. All right, well, let's get on with the show. We got a lot of show to talk about tonight. Of course, we're recording this on December 11th, just a few days before the big FCC vote on December 14th, where they're going to essentially repeal net neutrality. Now, if you're listening to the show, you know, I'm, of course, an advocate for net neutrality, and I highly recommend to do what you can between now and then to, you know, contact your congressman, leave voicemails, send tweets, whatever you can do. We can't stop the vote on net neutrality. We can't stop the repeal of net neutrality because, you know, they're going to just do it regardless of what we've said. You know, the public comment period was kind of a joke, and really nothing came out of it fruitful for those who are in support of it. But, you know, again, do what you can, talk to your congressman, because I think it's going to have a deep and lasting impact, not only on the internet, but also on our industry. But that's what we're here to talk about tonight. We want to talk about what this repeal could potentially mean. So we're going to kind of, you know, spitball our ideas and just kind of see where we think from the most gloomy, pessimistic to perhaps, you know, the most optimistic, and kind of see, you know, sort of get a sense of what this decision will mean for our industry. So, of course, as I always like to open up to our guest first and kind of get your take on it. You know, what do you think is sort of the best and worst case scenarios that could happen of net neutrality, and kind of when do you think we'll start to see those changes?
I assume they'll put them into place as quickly as they can. Yeah. There is no best case scenario if they do this. It's only how badly they throttle access or begin charging outrageous amounts of money, or cut off access for anybody who's, you know, on the extremes geographically or economically.
Right.
I mean,
or politically, depending on, you know, whoever's in charge of these companies, right? Because that's the big thing. You know, one company's going to back, you know, the Democrat candidate, the other company's going to back the Republican candidate, and now you're going to have a media company essentially dictating, you know, who you should vote for, essentially.
You can imagine, like, even Hulu is owned by one of the greatest internet service providers, but Netflix is not. So suddenly you'll probably see Netflix being throttled, but while Hulu will get to go full speed ahead.
Right. You know, you teach obviously at Syracuse University. Has this been in sort of a discussion that's been brought up by academically amongst the students, or, you know, in the classroom? Has this been, or maybe amongst professors?
I'm sure it has, not in spaces where I've been so much. I teach visual storytelling. So, I'm sure in the legal school, the law school,
Right.
their public diplomacy school, in certain parts of we have a school of communication, so it's not strictly journalism.
Right. Yeah, I figure this is going to be a huge topic. I mean, especially if you're coming into this industry, if you want to do this job, you know, it's going to be something that may affect. I mean, if this makes a certain category or certain, you know, subset of the industry inviable, you know, because of the caps and restrictions, that might affect people going into the certain career fields. You know, I would think probably the most would be affected like broadcasting or something like that, you know, a very high bandwidth, very high, you know, speed requirement. You know, I mean.
Well, the irony is that at a time when the digital requirement in throughput is higher than ever and is only going to increase over time because more and more people are using it to communicate in a variety of ways. And the more delivery platforms are dependent on both wired and wireless environments. I mean, it's absolutely the worst time to consider corralling that authority into a few hands.
Yeah. Yeah, I just got a 4K TV. I don't need to pay more than I'm already paying. I already had to pay $4 more a month for Netflix to get that in HD. Now I'm going to have to pay like another $5 just to be able to access it at a speed that allows me to watch the content in 4K. I mean, it's just, geez, there's no upside. Like you said, there's no positive lining, I think, to this situation.
And it's not as if Comcast is on the brink of bankruptcy if we don't help them. I mean, this is a billions and billions of dollars profit center.
Yeah. Hey, you know, some people need more than one yacht. You know, I mean, that's just the way it is. You know, you can't expect them to be happy with 2 or 3 yachts. They need, you know. Ron, you know, you're out in Hawaii. Do you think this is going to affect you? I mean, do you pay a premium for internet just for being out there?
No, we pay the same as you do, probably. I pay, I have a 300 megabit connection through Spectrum, and I think I pay about $80 a month, $85 a month for my internet. When I was in the Philippines a few years ago, it's the first time I noticed anything about throttling or about, well, anyway, it's like this. You can buy access to Facebook in the Philippines for a certain amount every day, and that's all you get is Facebook. You don't get any other access. So from your mobile phone, you can do Facebook, for example. And I guess we're going to have something like that here too. They'll sell, or at least they'll offer packages probably.
Yeah.
Where, oh, all you want is this? Well, here, that's all you do is this. Let's sell you this.
Right.
And maybe people can save money at it if I mean the average consumer, maybe it'll be cheaper for them.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's why I imagine you'll probably start seeing it first. Like the immediate sort of side effect will be this sort of packaging of certain services for a cheaper price. When I was in Honduras, actually, they had something like this where you bought, you know, your internet, you bought data packages, right? You bought like, you know, 1,000 megabits or something like that. And then you use your internet until you ran out of space. But they also had plans where you could just buy Facebook or just buy certain other services. So yeah, I think what they're probably going to start doing is they'll sell sort of the upside to this, which is, hey, if you just surf Facebook and YouTube, guess what? You can have an internet package that is half the price of, you know, the normal package, you know? And I think that's going to be like, wow, this isn't a bad deal, until you realize like you're now like missing out on everything else the internet has to offer. Although I do wonder, like, if you just get the Facebook package, what happens if somebody posts a story on a website that's in the real internet? You know, how does that impact
still link to it? Yeah.
I wonder how that affects it, you know?
I think you can still click the links, I think.
Chances are what some of the internet service providers will do is start to produce more and more content.
Yeah.
So the people who are actually not doing it for a considered interest are going to be shuttered.
Yeah.
Diminished. and the voices that represent specific factions are going to grow.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of, you know, I mean, already, like, you know, these are content creators as much as they are internet service providers. So they probably won't throttle the current speeds like you're getting, but they will probably do is when they build out their infrastructure, when they improve their infrastructure, when they speed it up, they're going to prioritize their content on that sped up infrastructure first. So yeah, you can continue to watch your Netflix or whatever at your current, you know, bit rate, but you know, we're going up to 6 times faster here, and you're going to get your content much faster or see, you know, much more content at, you know, there. I think that's what they'll do to try to ease people into the concept of it. And then, you know, again, the Netflix or the Googles or whoever, you know, wants to have their access pushed out there will have to, you know, pay or, you know, stay at the slower tier.
Not good.
No, I would say here, and I was surprised really when I moved to Mississippi, is that they actually have caps on data, on the amount of data you get in a month. For instance, if I did not have both DirecTV and, you know, Uverse internet or whatever from AT&T, excuse me, if I did not have DirecTV, my internet would be capped at 500 gigabytes a month, which, you know, when I'm trying to do a show, when I'm trying to, you know, surf the net, when I'm trying to watch Netflix, or I'm trying to, you know, back up my photographs to the cloud, that's all impacted. I can't live off that, you know? I mean, that's insane. And I had to get, you know, I didn't have to get, I was going to get, you know, I have to keep cable TV if I want to be able to have unlimited, you know, bandwidth or unlimited space. And it's just insane to me. I didn't have any like that when I was in Charleston, but now here in Biloxi, I guess that's what I have to deal with. And that's true of both the internet service providers that I have access to, is I only have 500 gigabytes. So it's not throttling. It's not, you know, net neutrality, but it is essentially a limit on my ability to do whatever I want to do with regard to the internet. And man, if you add a speed limits on top of that, oh geez, it's not a great world.
Well, Dave, you're missing the point, buddy. I mean, you know, this is why we have competition. Just go to the other provider in town.
Oh, okay,
and I'm
right.
sure you can get a better deal from them. Oh, there is no other provider in town? Oh, I'm sorry. I guess you're stuck.
I think I'm lucky in that we have 2 providers, a whole 2 providers of internet access where I live. So, you know, if I don't like one, I can just go to the other. Oh, and if they collude, I don't have any option.
Yeah.
How many options do you have up there in Syracuse, Mike?
In our specific neighborhood, 1, unless you want to go satellite.
Yeah. I don't know. I think about this more and more, and I think like there has to be sort of a response to this. You know, we've seen like municipal Wi-Fi or municipal networks try and, you know, spread, but it's always been hampered by lawsuits by the major telecoms. But I would love for there to be, you know, like I think what the Tesla guy is doing is, you know, really great. His whole ambition is essentially to, you know, obviously get the SpaceX rocket system down to a most affordable as possible, and eventually just throw up a bunch of satellites and blanket the entire Earth in a network of satellites, so that the entire Earth has essentially access to this satellite internet, and you can just, you know, probably pay a nominal fee and get access to the internet via one of these satellites.
And you could also, like, for a certain amount of money, go for a ride on the satellite.
Indeed. It's a win-win.
Capitalism.
Yeah. There you go.
That's right.
Elon Musk is ready to make a buck.
Yes, Mr. Musk, or Tony Stark, as I like to call him.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you know, I just think to myself, it's like, you know, we have to, if this comes down to it, you know, and if they ruin the internet the way it is, and we can't, you know, fix it with perhaps in the future a new administration or, you know, new FCC commissioners, because what would, you know, could we just, you know, vote to go back into net neutrality? What would be can we just go back to net neutrality in the future? Can we just become a Title II in the future? I mean, this isn't permanent, right?
Right. I mean, it's ironic that the new head of the FCC is what, the former Verizon honcho.
And an Obama appointee. Let's not forget that.
Did you see the video of him at the roast?
I did not.
He's there with the Verizon CEO.
Didn't he say he was like
Verizon CEO? It's a joke video.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But didn't he say like he was
candidate?
owned by Verizon?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. He says the Verizon CEO says, "Okay, what we're looking for is it's your first day of work here. What we're looking for is somebody who we can groom to a position where we can install you in the FCC someday, and then you'll give us everything we want. You know, like a Manchurian candidate."
Yeah.
He says, "I'm your man. I'm your man."
Oh my gosh.
If you look closely,
it was a joke video, but you wonder, right?
You can see the scar where the implant is on the back of his neck.
Right. Exactly.
I don't know. I don't think he had to be implanted with anything. I think they just wrote some figures down on a piece of paper and said, slid them over to him on a desk. Listen, this can be yours. All you got to do is do our bidding.
You know, when all things make no sense, the only thing that makes sense is likely that there is money involved. And
yeah,
whether he's, who knows whether he is or not, but it is about money.
Speculating here.
I will go with the.
I'm not saying he's a crook, but if he,
yeah. Well, I mean, crook or not, he's vastly ill-informed, and I don't know if that's due to his own desires to be ill-informed, or I think that there are, if he isn't being paid, he's I think losing out on a lot of money because his viewpoints are so incredibly just messed up in terms of the right way to think in terms about the situation, So, I mean, it's like if he's not doing it to be a shill for telecom and going to be getting a job out of it when he leaves, the public sector, then why is he doing it? Why are you ruining the internet? What is your overall takeaway there? What are you getting out of it? I mean, if he's not doing it to get a job at Verizon and make a whole boatload of money, then why are you doing it? What do you get out of it?
It does seem to be that's a segment of the society that figures as long as it works for me, it works.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I think for a lot of people, this isn't going to affect many, many people. I think most people, they're going to continue to pay their service provider for their internet access. I think a lot of people aren't going to be affected by this initially, and even probably in a few years. But I think it's for those people who maybe are on the tiers, who are on the edges and stuff, and they don't get the potential to get the full feature package. Like I'm lucky, I get the full fastest package I can buy, for speed of internet. But I mean, I gotta imagine that there's going to be people in less highly sectors that can't afford the full internet, and they're going to get this sort of abbreviated internet that is only what the service provider wants you to see. And that's what I think those people.
Are you talking about
vulnerable people are going to be most affected by this?
Are you talking about the internet or healthcare?
I'm not talking about healthcare, but
okay, just to make sure.
Parallels between that?
Absolutely.
It's like that right now with Google anyway. If the three of us all search for the same Google search, we could have vastly different results because Google is catering it to what it thinks we want to see. So right. I can imagine this is just a larger scale.
Yeah. Like I'm going to search for net neutrality on my end, and it's going to talk about, the South. You're going to do it on your end, and it's going to be all about, lays and alohas and stuff like that. And,
all I get is snow.
That's right. It's just a page of snow. Yeah, I mean, we talked about there's no silver lining to this, there's no upside, but I mean, the only thing I can see is that perhaps in sectors where there are multiple providers, this could be positive for them. Maybe, if you do have the option to have multiple providers, perhaps this will open up competition amongst municipalities, or perhaps we'll be able to see, people. The only thing I think of positive is like perhaps this will spur a movement where we can create an internet that's not bound by these ISPs, because I think about it as like we are all bound by Comcast, Verizon, or maybe some of the smaller ISPs. We all have to go through an ISP to get to the internet. But what if there's like a completely free open source access to the internet? I mean,
well, we talk about mesh networking. not just the internet, but private networks, like a mesh internet where we would set up a software on all of our computers.
Yeah.
That does not go with the regular internet. It just, I have files on my computer I want to share with you, and you get enough guys involved. It's like an alternate internet.
Right.
That you can, exactly right. Without paying anybody. It could be over, whatever system.
Yeah. So perhaps I put a little like tower or a little antenna, like the old school, old fashioned television antenna. I put a little antenna on top of my roof, and now I can get access to whatever's in my local area. And then, I can connect to a network of antennas and perhaps even get to, something like the Google, if the Google puts up an antenna. And
something like that, correct.
And you don't have to pay for it. It's just open like the airwaves are, That's kind of where I think I'd like to see something like that, because I mean that's what it's all about. That's the sort of utopian vision of what the internet is, a free and open access to free and open information. And so I hope that maybe something like this will spur on, if anything, if nothing else, that sort of development of that type of technology.
That would be wonderful. And
wouldn't it?
It's probably likely.
You think so? You think it'll happen?
It's happening now. If you go to the Cypherpunks mailing list, you can see people talking about it in development in its early stages.
Cool.
There are people out there doing this sort of thing, working on it.
Yeah, I saw an article.
Sometimes you may have to take a step backward, take a step forward, right?
Right. I saw an article online about some neighborhood that was not being serviced with internet, like it was, I think, in Detroit or something, and it was just a poor neighborhood or something, and the internet service providers wouldn't come out there, so their only option was like dial up, and they actually built their own network with like satellite dishes and everything pointed around the neighborhood, and I guess they were able to get internet. I didn't really delve too deeply into the story, but from what I read, it seemed like they were developing their own internet network. So we'll see. Google, please rescue us. Rescue us from this apocalyptic future. But anyways, go out there and call your congressman and tell him to keep net neutrality. All right, do that now. Pause the show. Go call Congress. There's actually I signed up for Battle for the Net, which is a great program. It basically sets you up, and it'll call you at a certain time and allow you to. It'll ring congressmen and whatnot in your local area, and then eventually going like all the way national. And I've done that for a few nights and left my messages and stuff. I don't know if it's made any impact. Nowadays, it's like it's tough to even leave a message because all these voicemail boxes are full. So, it is what it is. I'm doing my part. I can say I
hope you're enjoying yourself. I don't think you're doing any good at all.
Good for you. I mean, I've written our local congressman, and first time in my life. I mean, as a journalist, I never could. As working for the White House, I certainly couldn't.
Right.
And I don't do it as a university person. It's just me.
Yeah. I'd be interested to see like what your fellow, professor counterparts think of this thing. So it'd be great to have you on. Maybe after, obviously this is all said and done, and we have a little bit of time separated from the decision and now perhaps we can have you on in the future. You kind of give us the rundown of how it's affected, the Newhouse School of Communication.
That would be good.
What we were talking about this last week, and I said the only silver lining is that we're going to go back to newspapers, and so that means we're going to go back and getting all these, photographers their jobs back.
We can have jobs again.
That's right. We're going to bring back the newspaper industry. Look for it now. The internet's going to be so slow from throttling that it'll be faster to get your newspaper the next day to get your news than it will be to go online. There's the silver lining for you.
There you go.
Yeah, you're going to have to go Blockbuster. Blockbuster is going to come right there. I'll tell you right now, Netflix is going to create, brick and mortar stores. You can go to your Netflix and get your Netflix movies on disc again. That's
right next to Tower Records.
That's right. And Virgin Records and everything. So there you go. All right. Well, let's go ahead and move on to our next topic. We're talking about a Netflix series. You're just speaking about the internet, speaking about Netflix in the Dark. And it is a new series that is on the channel that follows broadcast journalists as they go and basically in LA, documenting what happens pretty much at night, after hours, after we're all in bed at home, enjoying the comfort of our high-speed internet and our Netflix. They're out at night basically chasing stories around, the stories that happen at night between the hours of probably 9 p.m. and 6 a.m. So that's their job. That's what they do. They run around, and I've only seen one episode. Only saw the first episode. But I think I got enough of it to kind of talk about it as somewhat knowledgeable about it. But it seems it follows three major agencies that produce content, and it is a documentary. But I think it's probably the slickest, most produced, like high level production quality documentary I've seen in a long time. But let me throw it out to you guys. What do you think of this show? Do you think it's any good?
I'm happy to be the second.
Ron, you've seen the whole series. What do you think about it? Are you happy with it?
Without giving things away, I can say this, right? Dave is correct. It's about 3 organizations, 3 companies, various sizes, from small to medium and then slightly larger.
Mom and pop shop,
and they produce
a major, giant one, and you got, I don't know what the other one is, probably like a single guy.
Well, it's like a guy and his brother and a couple of other guys, whatever. Then the other guy's got a couple guys working for him, and then you got the bigger company that has several vehicles. He's out there, right? And anyway, the point is, it's, to me, the TV show is about competition amongst the 3 of them, and what sort of things they're doing to each other to get the sale of the story, and then what effect that has on the industry as a whole. And we've seen that. We've seen it, for years before this with, the freelancers in the newspapers, or as we talk about frequently here, giving away things for free online just so you can have your name in the paper or whatever.
Right.
And I always complain about this is, if I'm a newspaper publisher and I've got Dave who wants to sell me photographs, and I've got Mike that wants to give me photographs for free, maybe Mike's not quite as good a photographer as Dave, but he's free. So let's go ahead and use his stuff. And in fact, the series talks about that as well, as the guys, they're undercutting each other on price, things like that. Well, gosh, this guy's a little bit better, but gosh, this guy's sure cheaper.
Yeah.
And it ruins the industry. And it lets people know out there watching Netflix what we see every day as professionals in the field.
Yeah.
So what are their ethical standards?
Honestly, they look pretty decent. The way they're portrayed on the show, they're not. You've seen the movie Nightcrawler, where he was going and rearranging elements of the photo to make it look better, busting into people's houses. On the series, I watched. I think it's 8 episodes. I think I checked earlier, and nobody does anything illegal on the show.
Right.
None of them have ever done anything illegal in the past. You see them moving into positions that maybe you might say, "Oh, I wouldn't do that," or whatever. And what the characters in the show say is, "Look, I'm gonna push the boundary as far as the cops are gonna let me do it."
Right.
The cops want to throw up a yellow tape. Okay, fine, I'll stay on the side of the yellow tape. But until they put the tape up, I'm getting as close as I can. So there's some ethical questions. But
I wouldn't say
it's
that's
not horrible.
ethical.
It's not nothing I've seen.
It's nothing different than what I think we do normally, in the industry. I mean, when I was working in New York City, I mean, you get as close as you can, without obviously interfering. And the cops will honestly use that tape as a way sometimes to control the narrative, to kind of keep you from covering the story sometimes. So you have to kind of, challenge that, not challenge the tape, obviously, but to, you do what you can, you don't get in their way, and you try and document and get the best thing you can. Although what we discovered too was that if there are too many people in an area, like a concentrated region like New York City, and I saw a lot of parallels between what they were doing and what I did briefly for a brief amount of time as a paparazzi, is that you get so many people in an area that they're kind of glomming onto one scene. You got like half a dozen photographers all trying to capture the same thing, and what happens there is that, well, somebody's going to step in my shop, so I got to get closer. And then somebody else is, I got to get closer. And so now you got like half a dozen photographers, each with their widest possible lens on. And that's why you get the swarms of photographers, swarming a celebrity, because they're all trying to make sure nobody gets in their shop, because the stakes are so high. When you're out there and like it was expressed, and we can talk about the first episode in that, there's like a lot of the adrenaline rush of trying to get to a scene, like there was a bus fire. And, two of the guys got there, and you could see them each trying to get a little bit closer and trying to kind of get the shot the other person didn't get. And a couple of times I thought they kind of came into each other's line of sight. And I thought, oh, man, they're going to get so pissed at each other. But that didn't happen. And then you get the other guy who showed up late, and he didn't make a sale, and he was so devastated. And, that's kind of, it's like that's those highs and lows are crazy. And that's why the guys do it. It's not just because maybe it's lucrative or what they got the hustle, but it's the rush. It's a huge rush to get something really great, but it's also a huge disappointment when you don't get it. What are your thoughts on the show, Mike? From what you've seen.
It's hard to separate my lack of interest in the subject matter from the superficiality of how and what they do.
Right.
I have a colleague who was a broadcast video journalist in LA for 30 years, and he thought it was a ridiculous show.
Oh, really? Okay.
That just, it's the lowest bottom feeding aspect of the profession.
Right.
That just appeals to prurient interest and no value beyond that.
Well, yeah, like I said, I think it has a lot of parallels to, paparazzi, in that you're essentially it's paparazzi, but it's for human despair and, the negatives that associate with life, like car crashes and cops chasing down a drunk driver or whatever, and car chases and all that stuff. And, it's nothing like, there's no substantial productive thing about it. I'm not watching this and getting any sort of like need to or desire to affect change. It's just purely entertainment built out of and constructed from life's misery. That's all that it is, and people making a huge profit off of it, apparently.
Well, another thought I had watching the series too was, I'm glad I'm not doing that. I'm glad I'm not forced to do that. I'm glad that I have an organization that does not require me to do that. I can produce my little stories, send them over, it gets on air, and I got a pretty easy life. I'm not out there hustling like these guys are for those late night car crashes and whatnot. Just if it bleeds, it leads, and that's not what I do, and I'm glad I don't.
Well, I mean, do you think they do it because they are forced to do it, or do you think they do it because they want to do it? I don't think anybody has joined these organizations because like it was their last possible ditch. I mean, maybe it's true for some people, but I have to imagine like they do this because they want to do it, right?
Well, quite possibly, but also I do think, like, for example, they mentioned in the show, look, I can videotape, nothing going on, a happy day at the park, and nobody's going to buy the story, or I can give you 10 minutes of a train crash, and everybody's going to want the story. So it's not, their point is, it's not my fault that this is what the networks are buying.
Right.
If it bleeds, it leads, and that's what sells. So that's what I'm going to shoot.
Yeah.
I'm not going to shoot ponies and puppies and ponies or whatever. I'm going to shoot car crashes.
Right.
Nobody cares about your kittens.
But aren't most of the sales to a local station?
That seemed what I got from the first episode. It seemed like they were, basing their success on the amount of hits they got from, the local. Because, I mean, ultimately, it's going to be the local media that is the most interested. But, thankfully, I mean, at least for their sake, LA has a huge local media entity. I mean, there's so much out there that's happening. And, they've got a lot of options, I guess. Although, it's funny how they just glom onto the same thing.
Well, the long-standing "if it bleeds, it leads" certainly has been part of TV news for a long time, and to some degree. And I worked in San Antonio briefly, and that was a highly competitive newspaper market at the time. And
yeah,
and whoever got there was one guy. He lived with a scanner in his pickup.
Right.
And he worked like from 2 to midnight.
Yeah.
And that's all he did was chase ambulances and got there before. Ideally, you get there before the ambulance.
Right.
Kind of thing. Right. And it ran on in the newspaper, and a certain layer of the community loved it. Did it have any real value? No, not beyond that.
Well, you know, it's like,
Were you working for the San Antonio Light or were you working for the Express News?
The Light, the Hearst
Light,
paper.
yeah. Yeah, the Hearst, yeah.
yeah, you know, I don't blame these guys. I mean, obviously they're just fulfilling a need. They are enabled by the news companies that buy this stuff, you know. I mean, if there was no market for it, they wouldn't buy it. And the reason there's a market for it because there are people like us that watch it. So ultimately, you know, we're the reason why they exist. If we didn't have a innate desire to kind of look at this sort of stuff, then the news companies would not have the desire to buy it, and these guys would not have a job. It's the same thing with paparazzi. It's like, you know, you can deride the people who do the job and take the photographs of the celebrities, but if you're looking at these websites that feature celebrities, you know, or magazines that do it, well, guess what? You are enabling the companies that, you know, buy the photographs, that enable the photographers that, you know, do their job. So it's your fault as much as it is, and it's our fault as much as it is, you know, their fault for existing. So
It's interesting, though, as a reflection of the industry, it's a market segmentation that daily newspapers, by and large, and local TV stations have gotten more and more shallow. The company that owns our local paper also owns them in New Orleans and Oregon and Cleveland, and they're virtually mirrors of themselves. Everyone has the same website, and all they really publish is sports and crime news, because those are both easily accessible. They have to do no reporting time. Essentially, it's just regurge whatever happened.
right.
And
I mean, is that their fault, or is that a result of the fact that these are what people want? You know, I mean, I think that there, you know, is an innate desire amongst journalists in general to want to cover the hard hitting, important stories, but there is that disparity between those who want to do it and the fact that there are people who don't care or don't, you know, there isn't enough people who care to make that type of thing, you know, valuable. And I think we've seen a shift in that on the internet because, you know, you can have a Patreon or something like we do. We have a Patreon. Donate to our Patreon. We're at $1. We got our first dollar on Patreon, but, you know, an independent creator can now go and solicit funds from the general public to be able to do what they want to do. But like the mainstream media or, you know, newspapers and whatnot, they're beholden to what the advertisers are willing to pay for the content. And that may be content that appeals to the lowest common denominator. So where is sort of the chicken and the egg thing, right?
the chicken and the egg for the newspapers, at least, was 30 to 40 years ago, when they were raking in 20 to 30% profits. And the internet started to become a force. Newspapers didn't really change until it was too late. So what they're left with is a much smaller market, the segment of which only responds to that sort of bottom feeder kind of news.
Well, I would say that newspapers couldn't change for the same reason Kodak couldn't change. It was because they could not, exchange a market that had such a huge profit margin for a market that had such a small profit margin, and their overall business model would not allow them to do that. So I don't think it's not that they didn't change because they didn't want to, or they didn't see the writing on the wall. It's because at the time when it was all coming up, the industry they were in had such a huge profit margin, and by the time everything happened and changed, it was too late, and they couldn't catch up. They should have adjusted early on. They should have seen the writing on the wall, but their profit, it's like, if I'm making so much money on doing one thing, why am I going to stop doing that? Even though I can see it's going to end at some point. I think that's the reason why.
Profit tends to want to stay as it is. That's part of the new net neutrality argument, in fact.
Right.
I was in settings where people did suggest, here's a digital way to solve the classified, but the hierarchy chose not to accept that, explore it. And that was the first major killing stone when newspapers no longer made the bulk of their income from classified. And then
probably even if they'd come out with a classified themselves, charging a fee, as soon as Craigslist came out and was free, I think, you can't compete with free, right?
No, but there were other ways to pair it with other efforts. And, swing it into the classified and all kinds of display ads and different approaches that could have worked.
You know what I want to do is I want to create a disruptive technology with my own name in it. So, years from now, they're like, oh man, we have to search the internet with Murphy'll. And they're like, oh yeah, got my name in.
They'll have to get over the bed first.
That Craig guy, I tell you, he is.
There you go.
Go down in history.
Well, I was working at the Express News in the advertising department, and this is after the Light had closed up. Actually, the San Antonio Light bought the Express News and changed their name to the Express News in San Antonio. I was working for the advertising department, and when people would call up to do their ads and they'd say, you guys charge an arm and a leg, I would tell them, why don't you call the other? Oh, there is no other paper.
Then they went to Craigslist, and now they're like,
yeah, exactly. Now Craigslist was coming up, and they were only city by city at the time. So when they came to San Antonio, that's what I got. Well, I was out slightly before they came to town, so I made my money in the class in the ads, and then once it came in, Craigslist. I don't know about display ads being able to help any versus free internet advertising. I don't know what the help of display ad would do really for the newspaper. And it goes to that too, that the people won't subscribe to the paper because they don't need the paper. They can get their news anywhere.
Yeah. Oh, well, hopefully net neutrality will fix all that. We'll see. But I say I do want to see the rest of the episodes of the show. I am intrigued by the subject matter. I think, there's so few series, documentaries, whatever, that I think really focus on our career field that at the very minimum, I feel a need to watch it just because, it is sort of visual journalism, right? So it's like to support our field in that respect. So I am intrigued by the series. For a documentary, it is the slickest, most highly well-produced documentary I've ever seen. Like, there's a lot of graphics and a lot of overlays and a lot of camera angles that look like, with all honesty, they were probably captured after the fact and spliced in, in terms of, you're talking about pure documentarianism, like the way they get certain camera angles outside the car and everything like that, that had to be shot after the fact. But for the most part, though, it's entertaining, and at least it's very visually interesting. And at least from the first episode cliffhanger, the next episode, like, I'm intrigued by that, and I want to watch. It grabs me and wants to make me watch the next episode. So I'm intrigued by the series. I will watch the rest of it at some point. And so
we'll talk about this again.
Go someday. Visual journalism. Indeed. We'll talk about when season 2 comes out.
Here's something to watch along those lines. There's a documentary about Chris Hondros' life.
Cuba?
No, Chris Hondros. He photographed mostly conflict in a very humanistic way. He and Tim Hetherington were killed side by side in 2011. It's not in mainstream outlets yet, but you can find it.
Okay, cool. Put the link in the show notes there when it gets out there.
Okay.
Topic this evening is all about how we travel with our gear. So, do we take our just sort of regular camera bag that we take for everything and kind of take it with us, on the airplane? Do we have a special travel, bag or whatnot? Do we throw our stuff into a Pelican case? How do we get around with our camera gear? Because, of course, if we are at any point in our life traveling, this is a profession that sort of lends itself to travel. Sometimes, you can probably stay in one location and do your job entire life in that one location. But, I think you have to travel at some points. And actually, in this box that I'm holding up, which you can't see if you're listening, but in this box, which I'll do an unboxing video later on this week, contains an Airport Advantage roller bag from Think Tank. I'm going to be reviewing it for the website here shortly. But, again, it kind of raised my mind about the topic because I've got every single camera bag you can think of, backpack, cross-shoulder bag, compartmentalized modular waist belt system. I did not have a like a roller bag, you know, camera bag with that I can take with me on airport. And it would have been actually been very helpful for me. I went to a recent trip to Vegas and I took my camera bag with me. And you know, it was, you know, no issues, but you know, still it would be interesting to actually travel with a bag specifically designed for taking with you to travel with. You know, could you survive just on that one bag? I don't know. I'll have to give it my full review and spend about a week with it and see how I do. But you know, what do you guys use to travel? I mean, let's start with you, Ron. Obviously, you travel. I have to imagine you travel outside of Hawaii every so often. Fly back to the mainland. Do you have any sort of bag set up? You just kind of throw it in whatever.
My typical situation is just a backpack camera bag, and I usually put a monopod on the side. Collapsed monopod on the side of the bag, strapped to the side, and that's usually good for my travel gear already. I don't have a travel tripod that I bring.
Right.
Just do without. The only trouble I've had traveling was in Japan, actually.
Okay.
Nobody gives me trouble except for the Japanese luggage people. Chinese, Philippines, Taiwan, no problem whatsoever. But I go through Japan and they want to inspect every little thing. But as far as like roller bags or whatever, I carry enough gear in my backpack. I'm good. I can cover any assignment I get. Yeah. I'm good already with what I've got. I don't need a ton of gear.
Yeah, I can't see myself needing a ton of room, especially since I've moved to Micro Four Thirds. It's like I can fit like all my gear into very, very small amount of space. So,
well, I'm sorry. What's this Micro Four Thirds? When did you do this?
Oh, well, I'm glad you give me the opportunity to plug my own camera, the Panasonic GH5, which I can't get to. It's over there on my new printer, my Canon Pixma Pro 100, by the way. Got that for a steal. By the way, I've got a photo printer. I'll talk about that on a future episode now. I have one. But anyways, yeah, you know, the Micro Four Thirds system, I'll be interested to see. But what I like about it is I can fit more lenses into it. I can fit more camera bodies. And I can fit my Mavic drone and all kinds of different other things that normally I wouldn't take with me on a trip. But because I have all this space and especially, you know, design camera bag to use it in, I might be inclined to actually like bring it out. So we'll see. Like I said, I'm going to load it up with every single thing I use, see how much I can fit in there and see how useful it is to me. So, I mean, you know, the thing of it is, I mean, camera gear, you know, especially the Micro Four Thirds, so much smaller, but it allows you to carry more stuff. So I got my drones, GoPros, Micro Four Thirds, 360 cameras, all the different tools I use to get creative with my art, and it'll be interesting to see what I can fit in there. How about you? You know, Mike. Obviously, you know, being moving around as much as you have. I mean, what have you kind of done, or I would say, what have your photographers done that you know you've worked with? How have they sort of moved around with their stuff?
Well, my own stuff is freelance work mostly, and I often lit things. So
you traveled with like everything.
It was a tiered approach. If I needed to like at least 3 strobes and light stand, softbox, umbrella, whatever.
Wow.
That would require the think tank roller plus another roller for the light stands and stuff. And
oh my gosh. Were you bring like backdrops and all that stuff as well?
I have a portable light backdrop and setup, and so I can just completely go to someplace and set up from scratch.
Wow.
But then you shrink down from there to like a backpack think tank bag and an old Domke bag still, and a smaller retrospective. I photograph a lot of cyclocross bicycle racing. So that's like with the retrospective bag and 1 or 2 lenses, a couple bodies, a couple extra lenses. So it's really whatever the function. Traveling for the White House, went to 20 different countries, but there you have to be extremely lean because everything you have to be able to haul with you.
Oh, wow.
And so that was usually just 1 body in a zoom, typically. I've been using Fuji's new X100F the last few months and did one of this little exercise where I had to make pictures of something every day, and being able to just have that single tight little camera
right
boy, what a treat.
So was it like a photo a day project, or what was it that you had to make a photo every day?
Yeah, one a day I called it, and it was engaging with whatever was interesting visually.
So was that like for a year, or was that for like a specific project, or what was that for?
For 6 months, it ended up being part of it was I was going to assign my students to do that this fall. So I wanted to see, okay, what are the dynamics? What if you miss a day? Oh my God.
It's the death. It's the death. It destroys you.
And
I've actually tried to do a photo a day project for many years. And I'm still trying to do it, even though this year I probably missed a couple days, but I try and whip out at least my camera phone and take something every day. Have you ever tried to do a photo a day project like for like an entire year? And we'll talk about this more when we come up to our January 1st show. But like, what's your kind of like take on those type of projects? Do you think you'll try something like that?
I think what I realized, if you build threads into it, and one day you concentrate on this thread, or you see something that connects with another thread, or if it's try to do freshly every day, that's when it fails.
Yeah.
If you're starting from scratch. So if there are things in your life that you do consistently, making photographs of those things and treating them as almost as a story can make a huge difference. I mean, stupid little things. I started to look for faces in trees.
Yeah. Well, most of the time happened to me is that like I'll get to the end of the day, I'm about to go to sleep, and I'll realize I haven't shot my photo yet, and then I'll shoot a photograph of whatever's on my nightstand. So that usually included like the lamp or my alarm clock.
No false
view
teeth.
Of
No,
the clock.
What's that?
No false
Yeah, my false teeth. Sure. Yeah. My pets usually. So that's what, when it got to that point and it devolved to that degree, I was like, you know what? I'm not really taking this project seriously. Because I usually like the first month or so, I'm like, okay, I'm going out there with my Micro Four Thirds, my DSLR, and I'm shooting with like in RAW, and I'm getting these really beautiful, magnificent shots, and I'm concentrating. And then it gets to the point where it's like, it's midnight. Oh my God, it's 11:59. Selfie. Yeah. So that's what they usually devolve into. But I'll still try again next year. I'll try again every year, because why not?
Yeah.
I'm actually going to try this year. I'm going to actually develop a day, sort of like a, think of a shot a day calendar, and I'm going to publish it onto the Around the Lens webpage, and it'll be something where you can challenge yourself. So it'll give you a little shot assignment each day. So if you don't know what to shoot, like you can go to that shot assignment list and be like, okay, shoot a portrait, shoot a photograph of someone you've never met before, shoot a landscape, something like that. That's my idea. And maybe that will help spur on the motivation to actually maintain the shot a day resolution that I will continue to do every year until I actually complete it.
Even if you just set out the goal of what I really need to do is be able to see light better. So if the goal is actually to see light better, and you happen to be taking a picture in that qualitative light, oh gee, I just made a picture.
Right.
Have you ever done that, Ron? That kind of effort?
No, I stay away from effort at all costs. Every now and then I'll be challenged on, say Instagram, for example. I challenge Ron Photo Hawaii to do a black and white photo every day showing his life. And I'll say, that's great. Thank you very much for the challenge. I don't think so.
Yeah.
That's 7 days, and you can dip into your archive.
You're right. Yeah, I don't do that. I never dip into archive. If I post anything for my Instagram, for my private Instagram thing, it's all new stuff. I don't have an archive to fall back on.
Something I'm actually going to try this year is a video a day. So not actually creating some new video each day.
Style?
What's that?
Nice that style.
So I'm not talking about like creating like a vlog, like an actual, because I do not have the time to do that. I have barely any time during the week to myself whatsoever. But my idea was that essentially, since my children were born, I've been shooting a lot of 4K video footage of them, you know, growing up. But the thing of it is that I've never done anything with most of the footage. A lot of it just sits on my hard drive and collects digital dust. So my idea with the Video Day project was to find videos I've shot, you know, over the last few years, in addition to stuff that I would create, you know, throughout the year, and just kind of take and maybe make a little short little video thing. Nothing fancy, nothing extensive. Just maybe like a minute or two video of something I shot in the past. So, you know, again, it wouldn't be anything monumental, but the idea was to take some of that video I've shot and get it out there, you know, into the world, you know. So we'll see how that goes. Probably like most of my resolution projects, it'll last a few weeks, and then I'll miss a day, and then I'll be devastated, and then I won't do anything with it. Zach actually tried to do a photo a day thing project for a while, and then he missed a day, and then he gave up. So that's what happens when you miss a day.
You just do 2 the next day.
Yeah, I know, right? That's cheating. Anyways, though. But anyways, with travel stuff, like I said, I've mostly just traveled with whatever camera bag I have. I haven't had the need to travel with something specific just for traveling. But I am eager to try out this travel bag and see if it's something that not only do I use for traveling, but can I use it for day-to-day operations? Because that's the thing. It's like, if I'm traveling with a camera bag, but I can't use the camera bag for where I'm going, then I think it's like, now I'm having to travel with another camera bag. You know, it's like, do I have to have multiple bags with me just to travel with? And I don't know if that's necessarily feasible or practical for what I need to do. So I think if this travel bag is fully capable and able to be used as like a daily driver, then I could definitely see it being something that, you know, would be very useful for me. But if it's just for traveling, I don't know how useful that is. I don't know. We'll have to give it a really full and robust test and see if it's something I actually want to take advantage of. Like I said, I've never had a specific bag just for traveling, but I can definitely see if it's something, if you're a jet setter, if you go from one place to another, it might be useful for you.
I will tell you a story. Like back in the Geographic days, there was a cadre of photographers who, you know, bags are like blood.
Right.
You just have to have them, and every assignment required a different bag or a collection of bags to execute properly. And if you tended to do a street photography, there was a range that did that. And so you can imagine this kind of an approach over time builds up this huge collection of bags. And what are you going to do? Every time a new bag is purchased, there is a requirement that you do a bag demo for your friends, for your colleagues. Right. And it's a very elaborate, detailed. Now, imagine you're on the street, you see something. Whoosh, ha, whoo. There it is. I got it. And we used to have so much fun. One day I was walking by with a new bag. I just bought a vertical messenger to me back in the day. And 3 friends were sitting having coffee near the Geographic, and they saw me and they looked like bolts of steel from their eyes. Like, where did you get that? How could you do that without consulting? And it was a limited edition. They couldn't get it.
Yeah. Just hold that over their heads.
So bags are like, to photography, bags are blood. You can't.
Right. I've got a couple laying around here.
I've got about probably more than a dozen bags. Well, not more than, probably at least half a dozen to a dozen bags. I don't know the exact count, or camera systems, you know, in my collection right now. And I can tell you, yeah, you know, going back to what you're saying, like when I was working in New York City, you know, the bag I wanted was the one that allowed quick access. Pull that camera out with the long lens on, and get up to your face in like 3 seconds. Start shooting. That was the key. If you wanted to be successful in what I did in New York City, you had to have quick access and be able to get the camera out with the long lens already attached to it, 200 or 300 millimeter, in order to, you know, really, you know, be, you know, make sure you got that payday. So that was what it was all about. So yeah. So
when I think about traveling around just the island, just loading up my van with my, let's say I'm going to do a portrait shoot or something like that. I bring my umbrellas, my reflectors, my studio light setup, you know, my, you know, various stuff, my backdrop, whatever like that. There's no way I'm flying with all that nonsense. It's hard enough throwing it in my own vehicle and driving it across town. No, thank you. When I fly as light as possible.
Yeah.
Or, you know, reasonably so.
Yeah. Well, that's a great thing about the Micro Four Thirds system. It's very light. Anyways, I think that's going to end our this week's show. I want to thank our guest panelist, Michael, coming on and obviously spending some time with us. Truly appreciate your time, sir. Mike Davis, is there any place or anywhere you would like to send us to so we can either learn more about your work or anything you'd like to let us know about?
Certainly, the alexiafoundation.org website will show you a lot of powerful stories. I also just this summer was lucky to be one of the judges for the Visura grant, which was just announced this week. Leonard Pongo received that grant, as well as about 19 other finalists. Each one of those is a phenomenal project.
Wow.
Just there's so much more good work out there now than there ever was. That's bringing complex subject matter into an accessible space and dealing with it in a very sophisticated and yet accessible way. And
I'm looking at your website. Very beautiful images here. Really, really beautiful stuff.
Thank you. I mean, the founders of the foundation have been supporting this work for almost 30 years.
Wow. Well, say hi to David Sutherland for me. He was my professor back in the day, and he's the one that turned me on to you. So great professor. Definitely missed my time there.
Yeah.
Is Sherry still there?
She sure is.
All right, great. Well, glad to know. Do you guys, keep up with the good work? Stay warm out there. I know the weather is pretty horrible. Has it gotten down to negative numbers yet?
Not yet. Barely to 20 even. So.
Oh my God, that's 20. That's t-shirt and shorts weather. Back in Syracuse. I remember being there one time. I was living on East Colvin Street back in the day, and we were standing outside, and there were these buses that were just trying to get up this hill, and it was so cold and snowy, and there was so much snow on the ground that these big municipal buses that could not get up this hill to our street. So it was pretty funny and sad. Ron, is there anything you want to throw out there or promote before we sign off?
Please continue to watch Around the Lens every Monday afternoon, 3 p.m. Hawaii time, 8 p.m. in the East Coast.
Indeed.
Check your local listings. Please donate to our Patreon. $1 a month is great, but we'd like more.
Minimum $10 a month.
There you go.
There you go. If you get up to our $10 a month tier,
and bringing you quality candidates, quality people like Mike here, so you can hear more stories from photo professionals. Please support Around the Lens.
I don't remember what our tiers are, but I think if you get to a certain level, you basically can run the show. So
yeah, that's right.
I'll let you run the show. You got it. It's all yours. Anyway, so thank you so much, Mike, for being our panelist today. I would like to, again, point you all to aroundthelens.com. It's the location for all the stuff related to our show, links to everything we've talked about, show notes, and all our social media. So please like, subscribe, and I do all that jazz for the show. Anyways, I am David J. Murphy. I've been your host for this evening. My co-host has been Ron Hamilton, and I want to thank our guest, Michael Davis, for taking time to be out with us this evening. So again, this has been Around the Lens, episode 103. I'm David J. Murphy, and we are out.